afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to another show, another Friday Drinks, one that I'm actually looking forward to. We are again sponsored by Golden's Pilsner. And this is actually fantastic, eh? They've come back again, and clearly we did a good job the last time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Are you happy?
I'm very happy. I'm a very happy customer.
Yeah. Andranga?
Certainly, obviously.
I see you guys are drinking some of their other products as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going to have. Maybe just at the beginning of the show, let me make an apology. Unfortunately, Joe couldn't make it. I know that lots of you were actually looking forward to this particular show, but unfortunately, he went down with a cold.
There's a nasty bug doing the rounds right now, actually. So,
So
stay warm
and try and avoid it as far as possible.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the Minister of Health actually came out and allayed our fears that it wasn't a COVID strain. It's just a common cold.
Yeah.
Because a week or so ago, there were already fears that maybe you were hit by another COVID.
But COVID is a cold, Rang.
No,
Oh, it's a
no. They specifically said it wasn't COVID.
Yes, it's not COVID, but COVID is in the family of colds.
Yeah. But, just to let you know, Joe is okay. So he was tested for COVID and he was negative. So it's definitely
Just a common cold.
Yeah, a common flu bug that's doing the rounds. And I know a lot of people that have been down for a week or so.
Wow.
Because of this. But, we wish him well. I know he's watching the show, so I hope that he gets better. And we're looking forward to that discussion. I was particularly looking forward to it. I mean, we've had lots and lots of discussions, and it's very divided around, conglomerates and focus or specialized firms, especially in Zimbabwe, since 1965. And it's a discussion I'm really looking forward to.
No, I'm sure Joe will join us at some future date. Yeah.
Exactly. And he's got an interesting taste in whiskey.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
So, we'll have an interesting battle when he comes through.
You will have a companion there. So what we're going to do is something that we haven't done in a long time, but I think that this is such an occasion where we can take us back to, I think a lot of our new viewers may not be aware of this, but we used to have lots and lots of rabbit hole sessions. And a rabbit hole session is where we take or pick one topical idea and we just go right down a rabbit hole, a literal rabbit hole on it. We don't restrict the conversation at all, and we allow the 6-year-olds to go as far as they would like, and we allow Ranga to sermonize or pontificate as much as he wants, and I'm also allowed to have an opinion and to go on as far as I want. And what it does, it just allows us to really exhaust a particular topic. And I thought that one topic that I thought we should actually dwell on is something that is topical, but it's something that we actually agree with government. And I know that we don't hear this often on this particular show where we actually agree with government on a particular policy. But this particular policy, we actually agree with government. And
Do we all agree?
Well, we'll find out.
I think you're jumping the gun there. But anyway,
I suspect it's something to do with capitalism and government thinking that it's good to make capitalists happy. Do we all agree? I don't know.
Not so sure. Okay, all right. We'll find out. And that's why precisely we're having this rabbit hole. So we're going to talk about farmer compensation. Should the white farmers be compensated? And if so, well, they are going to be compensated. I think that's something that is why I particularly am happy that the ex-white farmers will be compensated. But the question is, how do we go about it? Government has actually gone out and given us a statement on how they want to go about this as part of the restructuring. And we'll get into the details and into the weeds. That's why we have in this particular rabbit hole session. But before we do that, let's actually get into what Pilsner have done for us. You can see the bar, it's changed, it's brighter, and it's looking splendid.
Yeah,
well done.
It's not busy anymore, less clumsy, so we got rid of the other brands that are not paying for the show. So yeah, it's it's a testament of how far we have gone, where the product has become acceptable within the corporate circles, and obviously it's because more and more are identifying with the kind of conversation that we are having. And I believe that we are doing a good job of representing their brands. And that's why we keep seeing them around. So,
I was going to ask you about that. Why are we getting a lot of sponsorship,
Yeah, it's a reflection of the maturity and the progress in the product itself. So obviously, we are investment bankers. People always talk about proof of concept. So before you start going to the market and probably looking for capital funding, you have to demonstrate that the concept works. And this concept has worked for like 3 years. And now, obviously, we're not saying people should take us seriously, but I think
no, they shouldn't.
But look, it's good to be supported, to be endorsed by big brands. That's all that we have always been aspiring.
And
to
if
achieve.
there's anyone who actually wants to sponsor the show, do you have a strict code on who can sponsor and who can't?
We are friends. We are friends of everyone. So
enemy to none.
Enemy to none, definitely. All that you have to do is to look for our marketing people, talk to Ruth or talk to the producer, and then we can get you on board. Yeah.
Fantastic. And people who want to sponsor anonymously, because I know we've got lots of sponsors, and thank you very much to those who sponsor anonymously. How can they also go about it?
Yeah, it's still the
they
same.
don't want people to know about it.
Yes, they're still the same thing. So
they don't want Ruth to know.
They talk to the producer.
They talk to the producer.
Yeah, he's the only person that is privileged to know every little cent that comes to the show.
And I mean, you've had sponsors who've sponsored your drinks and have done so anonymously.
Yes, quite a few times actually. Yeah. Look, I think and credit to George. I think because he basically got us on this path to be having these conversations as a podcast instead of just at a bar or our usual hangouts. I think there is a place in the business community for this kind of discourse. And we don't always get it right, and people shouldn't take us seriously. But I think the views we express here resonate in the broader market, and that's why these brands have decided to come on board as our sponsors.
I must say I didn't believe that we could get 5,000 subscribers. People who actually think that we're worth listening to.
And this is what makes it even more exciting is this is like natural growth. So it's not like we went out of our way.
It's not an overnight success.
Yes, we didn't do any
it's
kind
like
of
a 3.5
promotion.
year overnight success.
And we didn't have the pressure to grow the numbers because we were doing things that we were enjoying it, right?
Oh yeah.
So we're actually the biggest fans of
the
show first. Obviously, we respect all the viewers and all our fans, but before we took the product out there, the biggest sort of number one fans of this show has been ourselves. So we didn't have problems of just maybe hearing the sounds of our own voices, and even going on to watch the show 2 or 3 times, and then obviously the community started to grow as the conversations were beginning to become sort of mainstream within that kind of space. So yeah, we are looking forward to the next 5,000, and I think it's not very far.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I like what he says that we're the biggest fans of the show.
Yes, we are. For sure,
and that's actually how it starts.
It's natural for us to actually get together on afternoons like this on Fridays and just talk about spar. Exactly, yeah. When there's lots of sparring, we definitely don't agree on a lot of things, and it's very
and that's okay.
Yeah, it's perfectly okay.
Okay, and are you not afraid? Speaking your mind like this. do you come across people who are vehemently opposed to you and feel like punching you in the face about something that you actually said on the show?
No, actually, I mean, if there are people out there who feel that way, they certainly haven't come up and and said so to my face. Yeah, look, I think so. Touch wood that that remains
Never
true.
happens. Have you come across somebody who actually buys you a drink? Perhaps you're at the bar and.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose those are the benefits. You don't get paid to be on the show, so those are some of the.
Yeah, well, you don't have to pay me to drink.
He's actually being paid to drink Toaster. Can you?
Yeah, it's,
That's
I can imagine a harder life.
Yeah. I hope you don't choke on the Toaster. And Ranga, at church, has anybody decided to tithe on your behalf?
Well, I think what has happened is there are instances where I think that maybe I'm enjoying my private space, and then someone just comes and says like, I know you. I know you. So now I know that, you know what? Yeah, I have to behave. I have to behave and redefine my private space. Yeah, but look, it's good. A very interesting one was someone that I know was involved in sort of a minor road traffic accident, and so I was called at the scene, and then I went there. So we're trying to negotiate with the person and also to try and get the police officers to come. And then the lady, one of the parties, was like, do I know you from somewhere? And then it turns out that they knew me from the
Was
show.
your wife around?
No. so now, it just tells like to myself, yeah, it's just as well that I'd behaved well. Imagine if I just said, after that occasion, start pointing fingers with the other party, it could have ended
Badly.
badly.
And
So-
tainted our
Exactly.
brand.
So I behaved well, and we're trying to just try and sort out the mess that was there.
Okay. And the T-shirts, you've done a fantastic job in actually spending money,
Which is
look
very
at this.
difficult for Ranga.
Yeah, very difficult, but look at this,
Yeah.
And the producer himself decided not to be.
No, but you see what was happening today, right? I was supposed to be on the production side because we're the guest.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So we'll
You see, so I'm always
excuse you.
I'm always Prince Harry calls himself a what? A spare. Yes. So look, I'm happy to play my
And
spare.
how was
role.
that transition for you? Because yes, you are the spare. If there's a guest that doesn't arrive, or we need a spare, then you come on board. How's been the transition from being, on the other side of the camera?
Look, it's it goes back to the issue that we were just talking about earlier on, to say that we are number one fans of the show, so it makes it sort of natural for me to be able to transition. So, okay, we were expecting Mr. So and so or Miss So and so, and they're not here, but the show has to go on. So,
phenomenal. Yeah.
So we call on the spare.
Exactly. You call on the spare. I don't have to be that prepared. I'll just leave you guys to, to be dealing with the harder issues, and I'll just make sure that at least the table, the set, looks more decent. Plus, you guys, the two of you tend to get carried away. So I think in a small way, I have to be
You
there.
do have your moments.
I do. I know. I know. Yeah.
And for you, especially your, ideological slant and some of your very apoplectic ideas or, notions of life, how have they come across to the audience?
Look, I think the business community for the most part is really free market capitalist. I do come across
So there's
people.
someone who's drinking your Kool-Aid.
Yeah, for sure. I do come across some socialists every once in a while, and people who believe in command economics, and people think that the Chinese system is the best thing since sliced bread. But for the most part, I think people in the business community are for free market capitalism.
Do you think we've done a good job in actually promoting free markets?
I don't know.
Like, I think that's something that we believe in, and perhaps that's part of the reason why we started the show, because we felt that there was no space for free market capitalism as an idea and actually propagating that idea, and this has been that particular platform. But do you think we've done a good job in changing minds, or is the tribe already people who believe in free market capitalism?
I think the tribe is mostly believers, and we probably haven't done as great a job as we should in terms of actually getting really articulate socialists on the show. You know, I mean, having said that, it's probably hard to be a socialist and articulate.
I felt that jab.
No,
but you know, I think
you are being unfair to a friend of the show and a regular guest on the show, Dr. G. I think has done very well to try and articulate that side of ideology. We had a fantastic show, just the two of us, some other time. Obviously, it was not tainted by excessive capitalistic ideologies. Yeah, but look,
didn't we judge Jaranga quite harshly for that for being softball in his
yeah, we did, but then I think we had our particular show.
Yes, and we went hard.
We went hard.
But
maybe that's something the viewers could help us with. If you know somebody who is an ardent supporter of socialism or communism or Marxism, whatever those...
Or command economics.
Or command economics, yeah, whatever it is. We would love to have them on the show, especially if they're articulate and they can hold their own. We would like to stillman that argument.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be quite excited to spar with such an individual.
Yeah, let's actually hear what...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I maybe just one last thing. If I would point out to one of the successes of the show, to me it has been this idea that people should talk about these things. So whether it's capitalism or socialism, all these things that are affecting us in the business, in the marketplace, we should be talking about them. We should provide some sort of a feedback mechanism to the policymakers for them to know how and what the business thinks about the policy announcements. And look, it's not really, we know that we haven't really gotten to where we want to be, but I think, I mean, let's take ourselves 5-10 years back. There was really no such platform where people could independently discuss some of these issues. And we have to give it also to the Second Republic that, in a way, they are allowing. They've opened up the space and allowing people to speak.
It's not criminal for us to speak
freely, and we should encourage more and more people to talk about these issues because they affect us. They affect us.
I must say that's a very important point because while we have a particular way in which we lean, it's also very important for us to understand how these socialists actually think.
Mm-hmm. Certainly,
just how they view the world. So they could be deathly wrong, but it's also important from our perspective to actually understand how they're coming up. What nut is loose somewhere. And what do we need to fix? But certainly, jokes aside, I think it certainly helps. What do you think? Just understanding how they formulate their arguments.
Yeah, no. I think it's important to actually, have empathy for the other side. I actually, I was saying this to you the other day that before we started having debates and conversations, I was socialist leaning myself in my worldview.
We all start that way.
And there's a joke about Churchill where he says, everybody's a socialist in their 20s, and if you grow up, in your 40s, you become a capitalist.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And if you don't, you're stupid.
Wow. So I wasn't going to add that, but yeah, I think it's good to have to understand the other side and to be able to steelman the argument. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Let's also hear what you guys think. Maybe there are things that we can improve. I think certainly from the production side, Ranga has done a fantastic job. We started with just one phone camera, and now we have a full-on studio. We even have better mics, and this is after 3 years.
Yeah.
Just knocking on the door. What's that biblical saying? You must continuously knock on the door.
And knock and it shall be open.
And it shall be open. Yeah. So, we're always trying to improve the show. And we're always trying to have as many ideas and as many thoughts around business and economics as possible. And we'll take on. So with that in mind, let's actually talk about the farmer compensation. So this is part of the 3 pillars of our debt arrears clearance and restructuring. If you remember, that's the Adesina and Chisano path that we have engaged as a country, and one of those 3 pillars is farmer compensation. So it's in our constitution. It's also part of our economic program. It's part of government policy. This is government policy that we actually support. And I want us to talk about it because it was in the news. And I will read out what was said in the news, and then we can get into our rabbit hole session, which I'm gleefully looking forward to. So it states, government begins compensation of ex-commercial farmers. This is from the finance minister. In a statement on Thursday, the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mtuli, said the government has started the first phase of compensating former white commercial farmers who were affected by the chaotic fast-track land reform program of 2000. I love the fact that they actually called it chaotic, because it was chaotic.
Oh, is it
Oh,
him
that's
or
putting
maybe
it-
just a reporter?
Yeah, the reporter, and I love that the reporter reported it as chaotic fast-track land
They put it
program.
they put it charitably. I would have used a stronger adjective.
Well,
But anyway,
still
carry
welcome. Nube said the move to compensate the farmers is part of an agreement between government and its creditors to facilitate the clearance of the country's massive external debt. The government of Zimbabwe developed and adopted in 2021 the Arrears Clearance Debt Relief and Restructuring Strategy to facilitate the process for the clearance of the country's external payments and resolution of debt. So this is the Adesina initiative. Pursuant to this, the government of Zimbabwe established in December 2022 a structured dialogue platform to institutionalize engagement with all its creditors and development partners towards arrears clearance and debt resolution, premised on reforms in economic governance and land tenure areas. The government made a provision of $20 million in the 2024 national fiscal budget towards the financial compensation of farmers protected under BPAS. The allocation is targeted towards compensating farmers whose farms were acquired and whose nationals are of countries that signed BPAS with Zimbabwe before the commencement of the fast-track land reform program. They didn't call it chaotic there, but yeah. That is BPAS that were ratified before the year 2000. Mm-hmm. So, Ranga, and I want you to start here. This is compensating for BPAS. This had nothing to do with land reform program, but BPAS. Please tell us what BPAS are. And these are people and these were farmers who were on the land, and those farmers were unfortunately invaded and occupied, and those farmers were kicked out. But they had government guarantees and assurances, and we're only addressing this 24 years later.
Yeah, so BPAs are some form of bilateral investment treaties that investors, I think investors sign with host countries, which says the host country is
Will protect
will protect the investment.
Exactly.
will
It's
guarantee.
a form of
Yes.
insurance, right?
It's some sort of insurance, but also to just say, because remember, third world countries or developing countries know that they didn't have the capacity to be able to drive their economic activity on their own, so they needed to attract capital. And obviously, the capital providers were worried about incidents of nationalization, expropriation of assets, etc. So to try and protect their investment, I think they were smart enough to say, as a precondition for any inbound capital, then these BIPAs had to be in place. Because I think what the BIPAs then did was they took away whatever dispute that would result from those investments. Ideally, a country would say you have to exhaust national channels. So if you're a foreign investor, you're in Zimbabwe, something has happened to you, you're not happy, go to our courts. But if the source of the dispute is actually coming from, say, government policy, do you think you would get better recourse, or you get better protection from resorting to the same courts that are being controlled by the same politicians? So the BIPA, what it does actually is to take the issue of the dispute resolution out of the country,
out of the jurisdiction,
okay, and make it an international issue. So the dispute resolution is mostly international arbitration. And and people, I think politicians used to think that maybe you could just ignore these, like some of the arbitrary awards that are awarded for some of these disputes. But it has been proven. I think in Zimbabwe there's this case of Van Persold. Remember the border timbers issue, when land was taken and etc. He took his issue for international arbitration, and he was awarded a very huge compensation there, and some assets were attached. I think it was a diamond in Belgium at some point. Yes. So what that did was to actually make it very clear to the policymakers and politicians that these people, once you've got a BIPA that's running, you have to make sure that you don't tamper around with it. So it's actually not because they want to, but there is no... They have to.
And it also, it outlives, the BIPA will outlive any politician,
exactly,
any administration.
Yes. There's nothing that you can do, because these international arbitration awards, they're enforceable in any country. So it's not just a matter of a host country saying, no, okay, we don't care. It's different from a SADC tribunal award, which probably has got a limited jurisdiction. These guys have got international jurisdiction, and they can actually have the awards enforced in any country. Wherever Zim has got an asset or has got something that can be identified as being an asset of Zim, anyone who has got that award can actually enforce it. And that is what has happened with the likes of Van Persold. So it's something that we have to do with it because we have to comply with international trade and investment laws.
What are your thoughts on that? Because this is not just your local farmers, but these are farmers whose investment was actually protected by the government of the day, and but they still lost their farms. And I think Ranga has done a fantastic job in just articulating why you cannot run away from it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Ranga's covered it pretty well. I'll just add, it's just bad business, to renege on agreements. If you want to vary the agreement, you should actually engage the counterparty and say, look, a bunch of things have changed. Can we review the agreement? And then you actually get them on board. If you're adamant that you need to expropriate this land that's covered by BIPA, then do it amicably. Don't just ignore the agreement.
So maybe this is a good time for why was this allowed at the material time? I mean, why would you allow? So we can perhaps agree on the basis of land reform and why it had to happen. But why was this then allowed to go with properties that were BEPA protected?
Well, because the whole process wasn't well run, right? I think the journalist in the article that you quote described it as chaotic, right? And I think that's part of the chaos, where you didn't actually have, I don't think there was that conversation to say, okay, guys, these are actually the descendants of imperial colonialists who settled and took this land. This land is actually from a foreign investor who had nothing to do with imperial colonialism, that actually bought this land. You know, some of this land that's covered by BEPAs was purchased after independence, right? And they made an investment in good faith to grow a bunch of stuff and, you know, be accretive to our economy, right? They shouldn't be disenfranchised or affected by land reform. So it's just the chaotic nature of it. But I think you started off on a premise that we all agree. I don't necessarily agree that the former commercial farmers are entitled to any compensation for improvements in principle.
We'll get into that, but we want to deal with the BEPAs.
Yeah, so the BEPAs, it's just bad business.
So why has it taken us 24 years to address something that is glaringly clear that there is a problem?
Yeah, look, I think that unfortunately our attitude as a country towards creditors, you know, people we owe money or people who we've signed agreements with, is very dismissive, right? You know, we've got all these bills that are long in arrears, and we're just not given to being honorable with our international creditors and counterparties. And, you know, that's why we can't raise any money.
So is this something that's positive that the current administration is actually doing?
So
actually addressing it.
So on the BEPAs,
from the First Republic, there is, you know, they could have just ignored it.
Yeah, they did just ignore it.
They did. But the Second Republic, is it a consequence of what Ranga is saying, that actually internationally we have been, you know, we've been found on the wrong side of the law, and they can actually, the holders of these BEPAs can actually claim assets in Zimbabwe, and that's why the government is reacting? Or is it because actually they appreciate investment laws?
No, it's not about it. It's not an appreciation of investment laws. I don't think it's a realization that it's bad business. I think one thing that we must give the Second Republic credit for is they're actually interested in restructuring our debt. And the moment you start having that conversation about how do you restructure debt, then all of these issues are going to come up, because somebody's going to say, but you guys are foul of this BEPA, right? How can we have a discussion about restructuring your debt when you are clearly in violation of these international agreements? You need to regularize, because the counterparties, for the most part, on the other side of these BEPAs, are also our creditors. You see, so it's the creditor in the conversation around debt restructuring saying you need to regularize these BEPAs. So it's actually pursuant to debt restructuring, but it's commendable that we are actually taking these steps to deal with.
All right. So we can move from BEPAs, and I know you're itching to tell us why you don't believe that ex-white farmers should be compensated. Please, you have the floor. Please articulate. We're not going to disturb you. Please articulate to us why you believe that the ex-commercial white farmers should not be compensated, whether for improvement or for land.
Well, look, we're not compensating them for land, right? So it's quite explicit that we're compensating them for improvements. But, you know, if I steal your car and then I put new rims on it, and then, you know, you eventually recover your car, am I entitled to a refund for the rims? You know, and that's basically, you know, in principle, if you think about expropriation of land, why we did it in the first instance, we are saying it's our land, right? So, and we're just taking it back, right? So why are we on the hook for any improvements? In any case, between 1890 and 1980, apart from actually just having access to this land, you know, they also controlled government policy, which was heavily skewed in the favor of the farmers, right? So you had all these subsidies, you had all these rules that were rigged in their favor. that gave them 90 years of profitability. So why should we as a country be on the hook for improvements? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. So I think what he's getting into, and it's something that you are a student of, which is rule of law. Because the white farmers would argue that, you might be correct, but we bought the land, we occupied the land according to what the Constitution and the rule of law was between 1890 and 1980. There's no one who has land or who was white who occupied the land pre-1890. They did so post-1890 according to the rules of the law, according to a country called Rhodesia, which had a constitution, which had a rule of law. Does Rufaro have a claim that these are rims and this car was stolen anyway?
So, Rufaro's argument would make sense in a situation where the actual party that was responsible for the theft, that actually stole the car, is still the same party that is actually holding on to it and has done all this pimping and things like that. So you can directly recover it from them. But I think given what has happened since 1890, I think there were a lot of changes that were taking place. Obviously, the original landowners of farm, or not original, but the first group of settlers who got the land, they're definitely not the people that were dispossessed in 2000. You could say maybe their descendants, but I think even within their grouping, there were actually sales that had taken place. So there's a big chance there's someone who actually bought, who may not have been part of the first group, or is not a descendant of the first group, that actually benefited from the land that was forcibly taken. The aspect of the land belongs to us. It's well covered by the fact that we are not paying for the land, right? So if we were expected
to... Farah is saying, why should I then pay for the pimped up wheels and rims from a stolen car? It was a stolen car anyway. Mm-hmm. Why am I paying for the pimped up rims?
I think there's a concept called unjust enrichment. So in as much as this one could have been a product of a crime, but you also can't just come in and start, enjoying the fruits like as if you also contributed to the investment. The land is yours. You can get it. The stuff that is on the land, let's agree that someone actually made a contribution for them to be where it is. And it's not like in fact, you have been allowed to occupy the land and to be using those facilities, right? I think it only makes sense for you to compensate this guy over time. And it's also, when you look at it in terms of investment promotion, you don't want to send a message, a signal that says you can just take forcibly people's property. Yes, you can argue historical issues or try to address the sins of the past, which is fine. Address them by taking the land, but surely the extra work that has been done, the value created, must be recognized. Okay. And also don't forget that this has been a life and a livelihood for these people. So to just say go away, it was going to cause irreparable damage and harm. Even in a situation where we have said we're going to pay them, we're still paying as a country for the, we're still feeling the effects of the post-land reform. You can't do that in this global village, if you could put it that way, where capital modern era, capital is moving from one point to another. So I think there are merits in the argument that is making that yes, the land was ours and we should take it. Obviously, everyone agrees, But
No, not everyone agrees, but that's a different
yes,
discussion.
yes, but still,
Because I'm not a fan of land reform in the first
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
I mean, if it was up to me, we wouldn't have done it at all.
yeah.
But if you're gonna do it,
Yeah, I mean, I perhaps picking from what what you guys have done, I actually think that even the land must be compensated, and
You're saying the land must not be compensated.
must be compensated for. But anyway, that's not the point of this.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saying the land as well as the improvement must be compensated for.
No,
because
the land
a
is
lot
a
of-
difficult one because
well, we can. It's a rabbit. Also, we can
Yes.
get. I think that we should not have
because-
expropriated the land in the first
But
instance.
could I make the argument why the land must
Yeah.
be compensated for? Right? So the land must be compensated for because if you think about it, everybody who got onto this land did so under the law of 1890. You can't change the law retrospectively. Everybody bought the land because of the laws since 1890. I have a problem, Rufaro, with your argument, primarily because of this. So you make the distinction of 1890, that this was a car that was stolen in 1890.
No, so I'm saying that's the reason for land reform. That's the underlying argument, right?
That the land was stolen.
Yes. I'm not saying that I agree with that argument.
No,
I'm
no.
just
But then
saying.
you say then the
but
the
that's a
rims-
fact. The land was stolen.
Yes, that's the premise of land reform. It's theft, right?
Yeah, it's theft, and you're saying the rims were of a car that was stolen.
Yes.
So you shouldn't compensate for the rims,
Yeah.
right? And you're saying because the car was stolen in 1890.
Okay.
That's what you're saying, right? That's your argument.
Yeah, that's my argument.
That the car was stolen in 1890.
Yeah.
Why are you making the distinction of 1890? Because this car has been, if we were to go with your train of thinking, this car has been stolen since 1,000 years before that.
It's been changing hands, yeah, for sure.
It has been changing hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has been doing so under whatever the rules of that particular time were.
Which was might is right.
Well, there's might is right that went on for a very long time, but there were also negotiations. There were a lot of Bantus that actually negotiated their way into getting land. We know this,
Yeah.
right? And then they acquired the land, and we've had this.
Then we've had imperial
Over-
colonialism, and then it was
over 1,000
reallocated.
years.
Yeah, yeah.
So why are you making the distinction that the land was stolen in 1890?
No. So
and not before that?
So I'm not gonna. That's not the argument that I'm making. I'm simply saying, if you are saying land reform is okay, right? If you're justified in expropriating the land, right, and your basis is that the land was stolen in the first instance, then why pay for improvements? It doesn't make sense, right? That's my position. If it was up to me, I don't think land reform was
okay.
accretive.
Could you-
right?
could you- could you-
But
could you-
but
could you- could
all
you
I'm simply saying
articulate-
is,
could you
all
articulate that?
I'm
Because I
simply
don't
saying,
think-
all
I
I'm
don't
simply
think
saying,
you quite understand what you're saying.
all I'm simply saying is that if we are saying it's okay to compensate for improvements and not the land because the land was stolen, then the improvements are on stolen land, right? Why would you then compensate for improvements on stolen land? It doesn't make sense to me, right? I'm not saying I agree that the land was stolen,
Okay.
right? I'm saying the premise for the expropriation of land is that it was stolen, right? That's the premise. That's the official position that it's our land. It belongs,
Actually,
right?
it's a negotiated position.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. So remember,
I think if you have a conversation with the commercial farmers, I don't think they'll agree with you that there was a negotiation for the expropriation of their land.
No, not the expropriation, but the compensation.
Yes,
Why?
the compensation is negotiated. Yes, I
The
agree.
compensation is negotiated. So the idea of negotiating on the improvements
Yes.
was that because the white farmers realized that the constitution had said the land will not be compensated. So it's a constitutional requirement
Yep.
that the land will not be compensated. But there's a very strong contingent of white farmers who still believe that the land, because if you think about it, anyone who owned land in the southern parts of the region, there were no improvements, right? Because of the nature of the land that they acquired. And the capital was actually the land and not the improvements. So it's not that the white farmers agree, right? It's just that it's because the Constitution, the 2013 Constitution, makes a clear distinction that land will not be compensated, but what will be compensated.
Yes, but what is the motivation for that wording in the Constitution? Right, it's this idea that the land was stolen, right?
And
that's the starting point.
And I'm saying that if you believe that, right? Because remember what we're trying to do is we want to get to the truth.
Yes.
So it's not what the Constitution says or what one particular political party says, but we're saying if we are interested in the indubitable truth, then the Constitution could very well be wrong. That people who crafted the Constitution were very wrong if they were to start on stolen land and made a date which was 1890. That is actually wrong because the land
has been changing hands for the longest time,
and every time
violently,
right? So you can't then make the distinction in 1890. But anyway, what
yes, because it's arbitrary. It's very arbitrary. The 1890
extremely. That's all I'm saying. That it's quite arbitrary, and we must, if we believe in business and if we believe in rule of law, then we must accept that whoever acquired land from 1890, including black farmers and white farmers, did so under the rules and laws of that particular day.
Yep.
And if they're supposed to be compensated,
I'm failing to agree with that argument.
Okay.
If you consider the circumstances in which land was actually taken from the black people. And the fact
it was unjust, it was unfair. Is that the point that you're going to make?
No, let him make the point.
It was so violent. It was so violent. It was racially inspired. You know.
How was that different from 50 years before that?
50 years before that, it was just our ancestors fighting among themselves.
Do you know how the borders of Europe were? Like if you look at a map of modern day Europe today.
So it's more like
do you know how the borders were finalized? Do you know how we ended up with those squiggly lines that are the borders of Europe today?
You can school us.
It's a history of millennia of wars, right? So this.
Let's not even go far. Do you know what Munum Tapa means?
No.
It's plunder.
Yes, but you're
That's
missing.
what Mwene means.
So all these were foreigners, right?
No, it doesn't matter whether they're foreigners or not.
Matters.
Why?
It matters, right?
How do you make the distinction?
Why does it matter?
Right. So these guys are coming all the way from Europe.
If
They're
somebody
coming here and we have got this piece of land that we call home, they just come and take it by force.
Because the order of the
and you think that it's equivalent or it's similar to maybe Chief, or I don't know whether there was Chaminuka taking someone's whatever's land.
We're talking about Bantu migration. These were people coming from Ethiopia, Egypt, coming down. Yeah.
So I like the direction Tinashe is taking the argument, because see, if we're going to moralize, right, and say, oh my gosh, this was so unfair, it was so unjust, right, then the entirety of modern history is unfair and unjust, right? It's one group conquering violently another group and expropriating their land, their livestock, and their other assets, right? That's the story of history. So if you draw a line at 1890, it's arbitrary, right? Because even before the imperial colonialists arrived in this part of the world, different tribes of black people were raiding each other, taking each other's taking each other's land.
You can't use race or tribe.
No. But the way colonialism happened, 1890, it was racial. So
there was nothing racial about it.
Oh, of course,
it was just the strong.
No. So in that strong group, did you see any black people?
No.
So they were actually there. They were in 1890.
It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that the Europeans were Caucasians.
I don't think. Anyway,
in 1890.
I don't.
In 1890.
Do you
gentlemen, let's do this.
No, it's a rabbit.
Yes, so we can.
Yeah. Well, but then
Yes.
Let's get the facts right.
Okay.
In 1890, people actually acquired the land. Yes, we have Cecil Rhodes as the face, but there were Khaleds, mixed race people from Cape Town.
No, you should start off with whites.
Yes, they were white.
They were the majority.
Yes, they were the majority. But they were also mixed race, and there were black people who actually got land. The original. Now, what makes Zimbabwe very interesting is most of the people got the land from plundering, sold, because they discovered that there was actually nothing there. So you find that 10, 15 years after the plunder, they actually sold. And they sold it to the next generation. And the current generation who actually bought the land, it was mostly people after 1942, after World War, 1945. After World War II, a lot of the people who actually occupied the land is post-1945. And these are people who had gone, these were war veterans of the Second World War, who had a bit of money, and they were looking for a place to spend that money and to make an investment. And they decided Zimbabwe or Rhodesia at that time, was particularly better than elsewhere.
Yeah, also I want to go further and disabuse Ranga of this idea that imperial colonialism was a racist project, right? At the height of its powers, right? Do you know which country today was part of the British Empire as a colony? Ireland, right? All of Ireland. What color are those people?
No, just because
they didn't care whether you were black, white, or orange. They colonized whoever they could colonize. It wasn't because we were black.
Was racial, but anyway, there's two generations that you could possibly speak to that actually experienced this dispossession, where people would actually be moved from their village. And they had their livestock taken, everything, and people were forced into some sort of a work.
How is this different from Shaka conquering people and taking over their land, killing the men and taking over the women and taking their livestock? How is that different?
No. Look, this was this.
Mzilikazi coming on.
The Shaka Mzilikazi is part of our.
So that's okay. That's okay. So
it's okay.
So for a black, if a black tribe raided your house and killed you and took over, you'd be fine with it.
Not today.
I think people like to look at things through a racist lens when it actually had nothing to do with racism. This is just how the world worked throughout history, right? Whether it was the Egyptians in charge or the Greeks or the Spartans.
Then, Rufaro, so then we must be interested in rule of law. And the rule of law, certainly the Roman Dutch law that was introduced in 1890 is something that we lived by and lived with for 100 years.
Yeah.
Right? And people were abiding by those particular rules. So we can't then retrospectively say those laws were wrong.
Look, in a constitutional democracy, we can change the rules whenever we want. But the question really should ask ourselves, right? Because there was a referendum in 2000 about land reform, and we could have voted to actually expropriate the land, right? I think the question is, would it have been wise, right? Does it make sense? Is it what X are we solving for? Right? Are we going to be richer or poorer for some of these decisions? Right? And I think that's actually more fundamental. And I think that Zimbabwe is poorer for land reform. And I think that we're going to be poorer for this compensation that we're paying. Well, okay, actually, the compensation is different because we're regularizing our affairs.
You know where I differ with you, and I want you to articulate it quite clearly. Because we need to address the wrong of the past.
Do we?
Yes, we do. Even theoretically. We need to understand the premise in which we are arguing that actually land must have been compensated for, as well as the improvements. Theoretically.
That's a bottle of whiskey right there. Did you hear that phone go off?
Like he's going to abide. Yeah. He's going to abide by his own rules.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm saying is we need to be very careful, right?
Sure.
Even theoretically, because what we're trying to create is a better society going forward.
Absolutely.
So I can live with the 2013 Constitution, which says I'm not going to compensate for land. But theoretically, I'm always going to argue that actually we should have compensated for land.
Why? Because on what basis?
Well, that's precisely what I'm saying.
Okay, so let's hear you out.
On the premise that everybody who bought the land between 1890 and 1980 did so under rule of law, under Roman Dutch law. They didn't just occupy the land. They actually bought it and they were abiding by particular rules and laws.
So if you're going by that argument, so it means you are putting your trust in the laws.
And we can change the laws anytime.
And the laws were changed to say we are not going to compensate for land.
Okay. So maybe I'm not articulating myself very well.
So
Ranga,
yes.
what I'm saying is I can actually abide by the 2013 Constitution, which says we're not going to compensate for the land. But I'm saying that the purpose of this show and the purpose of having a jurisprudence conversation around this is so that we are very clear, even theoretically, maybe not practically, because we know that compensation using today's laws is not going to happen as far as the land is concerned. But theoretically, let's not run away from the point that it should have been compensated. So that going forward, we're very much aware, because next it's going to be your house on your piece of land.
No, it's different.
That the
it's,
next
it's
no,
different,
no,
Tinashe, because this land was taken by force. It was taken from predominantly a black African population by a predominantly white European settler population, and for the longest time, it created this sort of class society between those the settlers and the Africans, and it perpetuated the poverty, the suffering, and the marginalization of the local people in their own country. So it was important to at least address or redress that historical.
I like your
imbalance and
okay. So
etc.
Ranga, would you say that it's any different from right now what's happening with the current black government, which is going against its own offer letters that it offered to black people and going and taking over?
Okay, that's a different conversation. I want to ask Ranga a question, a different question.
Let him answer that. He will get to your answer.
Okay, cool.
To your question.
No, that's not good. Well, because I think it's one of the reasons why we have not really fully benefited from the land reform, because the issues of tenure has not been fully addressed, and land is actually being politicized, where every now and then someone who holds a piece of
you're making the point for
yes,
me
yes.
that unless we address the rule of law, then everything will always be politicized. That actually the Constitution of 2018 is a political document. Unfortunately,
like
it is manifested.
like any other
constitution. It is manifested.
a political document.
Yes.
Any constitution is a political document.
But I'm saying it is manifested into the law. But it doesn't stop us from theorizing and making sure that in our heads, in our jurisprudence arguments, we are very clear on what is right and what is wrong, even though if the law says otherwise. It's like trading on the power market. It's illegal. 200 money changes, right? But we all know that it's wrong. It's a wrong law. It doesn't stop us from theorizing and arguing that the law is actually wrong.
Yeah. So actually, I agree with what you're saying, and I want to push back. So you make a very valid point about the marginalization of the black majority between 1890 and 1980. Yeah. So if you want to solve for that X, right? So let's assume that, in 1980, we had a Lee Kuan Yew kind of vision, right? And our economy grew 10% per annum for the last 44 years. And our per capita income now, today, was first world, 30, 40, $50,000 per annum, right? And there were no poor black people in Zimbabwe anymore. Would you care if we had or hadn't done land reform?
Yes.
Why would you care?
Because it still would not have addressed the historical imbalances that had been created.
But no one's poor. You've eradicated poverty.
You know what? So it would not have taken away the reality that there's a class of people who benefited from taking a resource by force.
But let me put it in another way. I think what Rufaro is saying.
So we could, Rufaro, we could still achieve that Lee Kuan Yew kind of argument but let's address the historical imbalances first. What's wrong with
But
that?
I'll tell you what's wrong with that. That's a fantastic
Where do
question.
you stop?
No, it's not even about where do you stop, right? Right? Because there's this mythology out there. There's this fairy tale that the best way to correct, so if perversely, right?
Can I get another one?
If you think about outcomes, right? Right. So the outcome of the marginalization of black people from 1890 to 1980 is actually that black people in our country are disproportionately poorer, right? Now, the best way to actually address that injustice is not wealth redistribution, because wealth redistribution, everywhere it's been done, it's made people poorer. Yeah? And in fact, in our own example, land reform actually made the average Zimbabwean poor. Okay? So you might be doing it for a noble cause in your mind. You're correcting a historical injustice. But the outcome that you actually manifesting on the ground is you're hurting the person that the very cohort of people that you want to benefit, that you want to help, you're actually hurting them, right? The best way to emancipate people from poverty is economic growth.
So I agree with Rufaro, and Ranga, I want you to answer this, right? Because I actually want to take this, the idea. What Rufaro is saying is land became an easy boogeyman for lack of economic development. Everywhere where economic development has happened, people tend to forget the sins of the past. We often do it, even ourselves, right? If you think about people you went to primary school with who are unsuccessful, they're the ones on Ndonganga.
Yeah, look. So I wouldn't. Okay, fine. I hear you, but I don't think ignoring. I think I don't think ignoring is the best thing.
We're not ignoring it.
We're just let him speak. Let him speak.
I wouldn't have gone supported the idea that we should have ignored something that actually happened, especially bearing in mind that we still had the generation of people that were directly affected, that were directly moved away from their land, leaving their ancestral land, and being forced into arid places, into areas where you could not do any meaningful agriculture, for a farming sort of based peasantry lifestyle. You know how difficult it is. And you know what? There's a whole liberation struggle that had been waged on that basis.
It was about one man, one vote.
No, it was about
it was about being second-class citizens.
It was about a number of
independence.
Issues,
let him speak.
Land was a big issue. Manawevu, maybe Ntwana or something like that. So the land was such a big issue. Look, I think it's about the how. For me, it's the how. That I think all the problems, economic problems that then ensued, could have been avoided if maybe the program or the process had been done differently. So how differently? Maybe through government working together with the farm owners at the time. And look, my history is not that good, but I don't know, like the argument that the ruling part or government was put across that says Britain had made a commitment to pay the compensation. I can't verify it. I'm not a student of history, but I think there must have been some sort of a formula that says, you know what, after all is said and done, we need to correct the land imbalances so that at least we erase this historical blemishes
so I think
from our society.
Could you answer this? Mm-hmm. Because I think Rufaro made a very, very important
which is what
on the economics, because there's nothing unique about land being taken over or about colonialism. Right?
So why is it unique that now land has been taken over again?
No, hear this argument. That in Singapore, they had a similar problem. Right? Land was taken over through colonialism. Mm-hmm. But because Singapore is highly successful, nobody cares. The only reason why land became an issue
is because we're poor.
Because we're poor, and because of the economic problems that we had in 2000. Now, I'm quite happy to hear the argument that perhaps the white farmers should have anticipated that the poverty in Zim, or what was happening as far as economics is concerned, that eventually there'll be some sort of replication because there'll be an easy target. Just like today. That's why I like theorizing. Today, we must also be very, very clear, especially with business, that the lack of economic development in Zimbabwe is such that even our tenure as urbanites will be under threat. Even our tenure as business people, because
you can just wake up, someone comes to your house and say,
yes,
I want to take it. No, that's not going to happen.
Yes, that's the nature of politics.
No.
The nature of politics
I think it's different, Tinashe. You are just...
your head is buried in the sand.
I think that's a false equivalence.
That's exactly what the white farmers thought.
No. That was... I think for the white farmers, the writing was on the wall. You know?
Not the 80s success. When the economy was growing, when there was a bit of stability in the 80s, they didn't think things would go haywire.
No, but it was very clear from 1980 that, before, during the liberation struggle, that one of the demands that the African people were making at the time was, we want our land back.
Yeah, but you see, here's the thing, so you can look at it from,
Anyway, are we not lost?
No, it's a rabbit hole. Yeah, so, and you are under fire. We're not. Look,
it's a rabbit hole session.
So if you actually look at the world in 1980, okay, and you the history that was available to our leaders at that time, right? Where in the world had wealth redistribution worked? You know, where have people been richer because you decided that actually this elite small group owns too much?
Can I give
No.
Can I give you a very interesting fact?
But I've got a problem with you characterizing it as wealth redistribution.
That's what it is.
No, it wasn't.
What is it?
Because so for someone who does not have a historical context of the Zimbabwean situation, they would think that maybe there were these very successful human beings who got successful out of their own enterprising and etc. And they amassed this wealth, and someone just came and say, share it with your.
That's precisely what.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened.
These were people who were beneficiaries of a core asset, a means of production, as you'd say in economics, right? That had been acquired by force. And this means of production had been taken away from other people. You know, just look at it. It's not just, like if you actually dig deeper into the history, it's not just land that was taken by the settlers. They would come in a village and say, no, you're not supposed to own, like, as a family, 15, 20 cattle or whatever. We're taking everything. We are leaving you with one. So everything was being plundered, right? And these are people who actually lost their own land, their livestock, their livelihood, and they were forced into a kind of a lifestyle. So because they wanted them to be working on their fields and whatever business ventures that they had, they imposed some taxes on them and whatever. They just changed completely everything, their way of life, right? Mm. And these people are still there. Like, we identify with Kumusha and it. Mm-hmm. When you go to a Kumusha, no, Tangachigaram keep. But at first, this is where people used to stay. And I'm not talking about our forefathers. It's a generation that is still there. So you're saying
different.
So you're saying those people must forget totally.
No. We're saying,
how's it different from Zilikazi?
So I was saying it's not redistribution. We're actually addressing the historical imbalances.
How's it different? How's it different from Zilikazi?
In terms of what?
In terms of displacement. Displacing people and stealing their cattle. How's it different from Zilikazi?
I would say this one was not racially motivated.
No,
so it's okay if it's
black people.
If it's black people.
Look, and we have agreed that even in that time, in that area, people, and there were fights, there were wars. People would, whoever would, so you invade a village. you take whatever the livestock, the women, or if you want the land, you take it. That was the order of the day.
But
That
Ranga,
was
so
the
here's the
system
thing.
that was operating there. This one was racially motivated. Europeans just coming into.
I don't think it was racially motivated, but anyway,
of course it was.
Let's think about this philosophically, right? For most of human civilization, the way the world worked was might was right. Right, so if I could
still like that.
No, the world has actually changed, right?
No, it hasn't.
Most of Africa wouldn't exist like the borders that we have if it was might is right.
So, Rufaro, why can't we extend it and say
Can-
land reform was might was right again?
Exactly, yeah. So that's the point that I want to get to.
That's why I say so. Might is still ruling.
No. So what I'm saying. So here's the point that here's and I'm actually going to meet with I'm going to end where you are.
Okay.
Right. So I'm saying for most of human civilization, that it was might was right. Right. If I had a bigger army than yours, I could invade your land, and I could take whatever I want. Right. And that was perfectly okay. Right. That's why we celebrate the victories of Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan and all these generals and kings that built empires. Right. Because that was the way the world worked. Nobody says, oh, but that was unfair. Right? It's history. That's the way things worked. That's how they've worked for the longest time. Right? And we now live in a dispensation where we say, actually, you know what? We're more civilized than that. Okay? South Africa could take over Lesotho in a heartbeat. Right? They could take over Swaziland in a heartbeat. They're not invading Lesotho and Swaziland. We live in a different dispensation where we're saying our values are different, our ideals are different. We don't operate on might is right anymore, right? We aspire to peace and prosperity, right? Nobody's right. I mean, imagine what kind of mess the world would be in if we tried to.
I think, Rufaro, that's where I differ with you.
Yeah,
because. And that's where
I'm actually
agree.
interested in him coming to where we are.
Yeah, please.
If we are following, we follow
Might
through
is
that
right.
argument.
That's
all
exactly
the way
what
to
happened.
the land reform.
Yeah,
where we control the laws.
Might was right. That's exactly what happened. This was
that's what
plundered by the might.
Yes. So I'm saying the world has transcended might is right. Right? We as Zimbabweans
But we haven't.
No. So we are regressing. Right.
Yes. Okay.
Right. But because we as Zimbabweans, we're not sitting here saying, but you know what? How big is Zambia's army? They've got so much more land than us. They've got the resource there. Maybe we can solve our economic problems by invading Zambia. We're not thinking that, right? No. Like, and we discuss our economy all the time here. But we've never actually. Nobody said maybe we should just invade Mozambique and take over that country. They've got all this gas. That's in their. That $30 billion project.
I think the reason why we're not doing it is because the might of the League of Nations will be on the side of Zambia. But that's why we then find it. That's why the state finds it more convenient to plunder its own citizens. And if you think about, and this is again, to address some of your issues of might is right, and right now. If we think about expropriation of monies from exporters, how is that different from land expropriation? How is it different? These things are still happening. That's why I want us theoretically to be very clear about what is right.
This one is bad because there's no historical imbalance that you're trying to address.
You are moralizing. You are moralizing because we can go back 1,000 years and say, actually, this piece of land in Otito, the rightful owners, were these people who lived there 600 years ago, and they were dispossessed by that tribe, and then that tribe came on, and then imagine what kind of mess we would create
but
if we wanted to go back in time and try to correct every historical injustice.
Let Ranga answer this. How is exporters' expropriation of their receipts any different from land expropriation? And this is where Rufaro has got a point. It's all wealth redistribution.
No.
How's it different?
So
distill it for us.
The land reform was a program where the majority black people were taking back the land that had been taken away from them by force by a predominantly white European settler population. So there's some justification. If it's not, there's a justification from a national interest point of view, because you're saying that we lost this. This is something that was done to us, to our forefathers, and as a result of that, we have actually continued to suffer because we don't have this. We don't have ownership of this critical resource, right?
How's it different from
the
export?
No. This is a private.
How's it different?
This is a private player. This is a private player that have generated a foreign currency cash flows from their own enterprising, from their own business operations.
The mineral is coming from our land.
No.
Who's the rightful owner of this?
But look,
it's difficult to sustain that argument.
But we've got laws that deals with maybe miners have to pay royalties.
So when we did land reform, did we
taxes or things like that?
Did land reform actually was it legal? In terms of our own laws at the time, even though we, it
was illegal.
Was it legal?
It's a very difficult question.
It's not actually a difficult question, right? You know what the rules were at the time that we did land reform. So, we had a constitution.
Okay.
We had a referendum. So people said no.
No. So at the time,
was it legal?
So at the time, when the land was taken, Andiga, the laws of the land, right, did not provide for that.
So it was illegal.
It was illegal. But when you're saying illegal, you also have to factor in national interest. You have to factor in national interest, right? That sometimes.
So it was in our national interest to be poorer.
Yes. So do you know, like national?
No. Are you saying it was in our national interest to be poorer?
National interest tends to move faster. It tends to be way ahead of. The alignment that needs to be done in the laws.
So
the mood and the national interest at the time was, we need to take our land.
So how's it different?
What do you mean the mood, though?
How's national interest? How's it different?
That's the mood.
No. We had a referendum that told you the mood, right? We actually had a referendum and people voted. Okay, right? That was the mood.
How's it different from exporter expropriation?
No, that one is bad. You should not do that.
But how do you make the distinction? Because it's still might is right.
No. Land.
We're still ruled by.
Yeah.
So
I think.
But land is a public asset. It's a public asset.
Why? Do you not have title deeds to your house? Is that a public asset?
Yeah,
is it on land?
In Angola, they nationalized every land. Do you know your house? There's a real threat that in the foreseeable future, your land could also be nationalized.
My house.
Your house could be nationalized.
No, that's not.
It's very conceivable, and that's why we have these discussions. Because what we're trying to do is we know what
need
the
to
law
respect.
says.
You see, firstly, I think that you can't correct every historical justice going back in time, right? Number one.
But the key ones, you have to correct them.
Number two,
correct key ones.
You actually you've got to. You've got to make a decision about the outcome that you want, right? Do you want prosperity or poverty? What do you prefer between those two, right? Because if I can
simplify the argument for you. It's something that we all live by. When there's no money, the arguments are treacherous. When everybody is rich, nobody cares. Land reform is purely a manifestation of a poor country. That was the easy thing for us to do as a state, was to attack those who held wealth.
The 4,000 commercial farmers.
Especially those who
will never stop.
held on to wealth as a result of a historical...
That's the justification. And we can always
But that's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
And it could be a fact. It could actually be a fact. But that's a justification. In as much as right now, the people who with the wealth are exporters. And we will find the justification of why we must expropriate the exporters.
No, we
and
not
we're
do
saying that. That's why theoretically we have to be on the right side of history. We have to say we have allowed this to happen, but let's be clear, it's not the right way of going about it.
Yeah,
because so that in the future we don't make the same mistakes. That's
we,
really my argument.
the only way we're going to emancipate Zimbabweans from poverty, and best believe the majority of Zimbabweans live in poverty, right? Is if we grow this economy aggressively over the next decades, right? And so what will take us to this promised land, right? It's not might is right, right? It's not the government of the day saying, well, actually, this small group of people over there seems to control, a disproportionate chunk of the economy. Let's take it.
No, we don't have
that
so
value.
they need to do that. Let
him finish.
Okay.
Right. Let him finish.
We're not going to get to the promised land from expropriating from the haves and redistributing amongst the have-nots. Right? We're going to get to the promised land by growing this economy year in, year out, decade in, decade out. It's not going to happen overnight, but if we adopt the right policies over 20, 30 years, we might wake up and be a rich country.
So, Ranga, quickly respond to that, because we're being told that it's time
We've
out.
overshot, apparently.
Look, it's
been so much fun.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Well, maybe I'll say my parting words are, I believe that it was necessary for the land reform to be done at some point. I also believe that it could have been done differently. That it was possible to bring all the parties in a room. So by the parties, I mean the key parties, for example, the farmers who were holding on to the land, and the government, and say, you know what, let's solve this land issue, especially for the peasants, for the people in the villages. Not so about people who want 200 hectares, 300 hectares, because those were commercial ventures. So those ones should have resorted to pure commercial transactions. But for the people that wanted maybe 5 hectares that were crammed in some sort of a corner, which is not even possible for you to do any meaningful farming for subsistence, I think those ones really needed the land. Look, it's already done, the land reform. And the good thing is we can continue having debates and arguments, but the land has been the land reform issue has been resolved, and I think we just need to move forward so we can we compensate the farmers for the improvements. I think it's only fair.
Not just fair, but it's actually a good thing that the government is doing. And we support the initiative, not just beepers, but beyond beepers. I think that the improvements and maybe what is key is perhaps those that have the ability to compensate directly the white farmers. So these are black farmers who are already on the land. If they can get title deeds, then very much I think government should push for that. That if someone is occupying the land and they've got the ability to fund and to compensate the former white farmer who was on the land, then that should be possible. Now, parting shots, I thought this would be something that's very interesting and curious about, because I think we've correctly defined the parameters in which land reform happened, that it's wealth redistribution. There's a place where
I'm not agreeing.
Lovely.
Okay, you're not agreeing as far as that, but let's take that theory, right? And those are parameters. There's somewhere where it has actually happened, and it was Mao of 1949, and he took over land of the wealthy Chinese people of that particular
era.
Were they colonizers?
Epoch. No.
Doesn't matter.
It actually, these were not colonizers. These were Chinese wealthy, because remember, it's just communism.
That is bad.
As long as it's racial, but anyway, hear this
sees race.
So pre-Mao, when you look at the elite, compared the redistribution of wealth, or the wealth inequality between the wealthy and the not so wealthy, there was a gap, and let's call that gap 11 times, right? The wealthy and the not so wealthy. And then Mao comes and he takes over land. Not only does he take over the land, he takes over and appropriates and expropriates all their wealth. So in the next generation, the difference between these guys and the have-nots reduces. substantially, because they were
Because everybody became poor, pretty
everybody
much.
became poor. But by the third generation, guess what has happened? The same wealthy people in the Chinese system are now wealthier now in a manufacturing economy. So the difference has now gone back to pre-Mao times.
Except that there's much less poverty.
There's far less poverty, but the wealthy, the elite, are still the wealthy in society. And what it speaks to is that you can't redistribute wealth.
To solve poverty.
To solve poverty, because a lot of it, wealth, to create wealth, has to do with, the mental psyche. It has to do with your
Culture.
mentality and a culture, a particular culture. And that particular culture is actually cultivated in elite societies. And yes, you can take away their wealth, and you might think that you succeeded, but actually you haven't.
And it's never worked anywhere in the world that it's
It
been
hasn't.
tried. Okay. Right?
So I think on that particular note, please, this was excuses. This was a rabbit hole session. So it's to just really exhaust one particular topic that we disagree on, but find interesting nonetheless. Please share your comments. Disagree with us if you must. Agree with us if you must. But, be honorable and do so in a nice way. I think it's okay to be disagreeable, right? And to have.
No, I think Obama said it quite eloquently and succinctly. He said, it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable.
Well, yeah. Being disagreeable is a personality trait.
No, but he wasn't talking about the personality trait. He was talking about being disagreeable.
Okay, all right. But my argument is we have lots of people who are disagreeable. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with
the personality trait.
With the
but
personality
you can
trait.
disagree in a civil,
respectful way.
Without being disagreeable. That's what Obama was. Okay. That's the point he was making.
Maybe before Mkanya here closes, ends the show, Shumba, maybe just tell us a little bit about, because so far it looks like it's the fourth one.
Oh yeah, it's going down. It's good. It's
Yes,
Pilsner.
yes.
It's a light beer.
How are they different?
It's
Are these
3.8%
lagers or whatever? Like when you're looking at that Delta portfolio from the castles to the what? Maybe for you just to speak to.
So this is phenomenal. I appreciate the opportunity.
You had 4 of these in an hour.
Well, no, this is my third one. Actually, seriously, this is. I've had 2, and this is the third one.
Do you have a problem we should be worried about?
No, not at all.
No. You can speak. Speak.
So this is actually an award-winning global beer. It's one. So if you actually look at the back of your Pilsner glass, it's got the details of the awards that it's won in global competitions.
Okay.
Monte Selection 2013 and Monte Selection 2015.
So it's called a Pilsner because it's apart from just your barley malt, it has it gets some of its flavor from the SARS hop, and this is it's a light beer. It's only 3.8.
Is this a Zimbabwean product?
Yeah, it's a Zimbabwean product. It's only 3.8%. It's actually, you won't find this in South Africa, even though, Delta for the longest time was owned by SAB Miller. So it's proudly a Zimbabwean brand and invention, and it's award-winning, and it's a refreshing light beer. You can drink this all day and. If you're healthy, be just fine.
We have the proof.
Because
that 3
1 hour. Because it's a light beer. It's like 3.8% alcohol by volume.
Are you trying to convince yourself that you're drinking lots and lots of water there?
Well, yeah, it is like 90% plus water. Right? Stronger beers, like your Castle. Are 5%, and it doesn't sound like a big difference, right? 3.8% to 5%. But if you talk to any drinker, they'll tell you that the next morning it makes a huge difference whether you're drinking, this is lovely.
So there you have it.
Thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's phenomenal. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to carry on.
Easier and lighter and
we're going to continue to hammer this guy so that open
No, I
his
think
mind.
he was just playing devil's advocate.
He was playing devil. No, I actually think Ranga legitimately believes the things he was saying. I'm concerned about him because he's my business partner. So,
thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies who watch the show. Thank you very much. In the next coming weeks, we've got very interesting guests, so please join us. Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful Friday evening and great weekend ahead. Cheers.
Cheers.
This guy thinks race was. It's like people arguing with slavery was a racist thing.